Okay, hi. Thank you for the introduction. So yes, I'm going to talk about efficient two-round OT extension from learning parity with noise today. And you see there's a star in the headline, so you should be a bit suspicious about what that means on top of being suspicious being in the circumventing low bound session in this workshop. So maybe more for the non-cryptography audience, a short introduction to oblivious transfer or short OT. So Alice and Bob want to engage in a protocol such that Alice learns exactly one of the messages of Bob and nothing more, and Bob does not get any information about which message Alice chose. And one can ask, what is this useful for? This is actually super useful because it implies MPC for all functions, and it's not only theoretically useful, it's actually used in practical protocols for secure multi-party computation. So the next question you can ask, can you get it efficiently? And rephrasing this question is, one way to ask this question is, can it be constructed from symmetric key primitives? So what you can think of symmetric key primitives, anything that you get from a random oracle, or like we already saw a minicrypt in previous talks. Yes, and why is that? So generally, like what you get from random oracle, one-way functions, hash functions, it's very efficient. So this is something you want when you actually want to use it in practice. Unfortunately, as we saw yesterday, this is by a result of Pagliaccio and Vujic, this is generally impossible to get from random oracles. So there's no hope in constructing OT in a black box way, for example, from one-way functions. So the next best question that we can ask is, we have the same problem for if you think about encryption. We want public key encryption, but we don't get it from secret key encryption. So what can we do? We can do hybrid encryption. We can use a public key crypto system to encrypt the secret key, only have the expensive part once, and then all the rest we can do symmetric and just have symmetric key operations. And the equivalent of doing this for OT is OT extension. And this is actually useful because, like for secure communication, we usually have many messages. If we use OT for secure computation protocols, we need lots and lots and lots of OTs. So this is something very useful. And so the next best question we can ask, can you construct many OTs given black box access to just a few OTs, and on top of that only using symmetric key operations? And then this is the first yes answer in this talk. So yes, you can do that. That's known since Beaver's result, who constructed in a non-black box way OT extension from one-way functions. And you can even do it. So you can even do it in a black box way, as was shown by Ishai, Kilian, Nissim, and Petrank. So the IKNP protocol that you can, from random oracles, you get in a black box way OT extension. And maybe a few words to the two approaches, as they're quite different. So the Beaver's approach is basically to gobble. So the sender gobbles a PRG and sends it over to the receiver, and then the receiver can input a seed and get the output corresponding to the choice bits corresponding to the extended seed. And the OTs are just used to give him the labels for the wires that he needs. This is basically the first approach, and the second approach, the very high-level idea is, instead of doing a lot of OTs with few messages, you do a few OTs with a lot of messages. And in order for this to work, so this has the advantage over Beaver to be much more efficient, but in order for this to work, you need to reverse the role of the sender and the receiver. So the OTs you actually use the other way around, and this inherently needs you to add a third round, because the last message in OT always has to go, for it to make sense, from the receiver, from the sender to the receiver. And yes, and actually, like, you get it from random oracles, but what you get is what you can also use a so-called correlation robust hash function to instantiate it, and I'll talk a bit about this more later. And so we have these two approaches, and basically the one approach gives us 2 rounds and black box, a non-black box construction. Yeah, otherwise that. And the other approach gives us 3 rounds with a 3 rounds black box, 2 rounds, 3 rounds black box, 2 rounds non-black box. Yes, and as you see, like black box is non-efficient because we have this huge. We have to gobble the PRG and we have to send it over. And IKMP, on the other hand, is very efficient. And of course, we would like to have both. We would like to have 2 round and efficient. And a way to ask this question is, can 2 round OT extension be constructed black box from symmetric key primitives? So this is like directly like the question we can ask. And this is the low bound that is mentioned in the title. So there was a result of Gag, Mahmoudi, Masni, and Meckler last year's crypto, that actually there's no hope in getting that because random oracles don't imply 2 round OT extension. And so to show this in the plane, like if you wouldn't have random oracles, then you could show this, or the idea is a like information theoretic entropy argument. And the hard part is actually because the random oracle introduces additional correlations. So the hard part is like how do you handle these correlations? And this is actually done in this work, and it shows like this excludes around OT extension. Okay, so what do you do if you cannot like answer the question in a way that you want to answer this question? Because if you care about upper bounds, well, you just answer a different question. So the question that we're going to answer is, can efficient 2 round OT extension be constructed from, and what we say, a symmetric assumption? And I'll explain later what I mean by a symmetric assumption. And this is the question that I want to answer in this talk with yes. Okay, and the tool we will use for this talk is our pseudorandom correlation generators, and this is a primitive like in this form quite recently introduced, and the idea is that you have short correlated seed, and you can locally expand it to long pseudorandom strings that are also that satisfy like some correlation. So for the simplest example, think of a PRG. A PRG is a PCG for the equality correlation. If you have the same seed and you expand it with a PRG, you get long pseudorandom strings that are the same. And what we care about, or what, and this is a generalization for all kind of correlations. And why are we hoping that this helps us for OT extension? Well, for OT extension, we choose this correlation to be OT. And so the idea is because the seeds that we want to have, like for PRGs, we hope them to be very short. So the idea is if we just have to set up a short seed, a few OTs are sufficient to set up the seed. And then we expand and get many OTs. So there I mean like many pairs of messages for the sender Bob, and for Alice, choice bits and the corresponding message as the correlation. Yes. And now I talked about why it's useful and roughly what it is, and a bit more formally how our pseudorandom correlation generator is defined. So you have a key or seed generation algorithm that gives you keys that you then can locally expand, as I already said, via expansion algorithm to long strings. And of course you want correctness so that the strings are indeed correlated, what I denote by this tilde here. And you want security. It's an indistinguishable based security notion. So basically what you want is that Alice does not learn anything about like Bob's long string except what she can trivially derive for knowing that it will be in correlation with her own long string. And the same vice versa, of course. And like what I want to mention here, a very nice feature that pseudorandom correlation generators have is like a silent feature. So as soon as you have this, as you have set up this short seed, like there's no further communication required to get to get this correlation. So if you think of in the setting of MPC, when you don't know with whom you want to engage in some MPC protocol in the future, you can just run it with many people and just, it's very memory cheap. You just save the short seed, and then at any time in the future you want to engage in computation, like for the pre-processing, no further communication is needed. And yeah, there has been like a line of construction of PCGs, so like more broadly. So for very simple correlations, like multi-party linear correlations, actually already 20 years ago, and more recently for like all kind of correlations from different kind of assumptions. So yeah, this is actually this will actually appear at Crypto this year. This is with a subset of the authors from this talk, and what I want to focus on today is giving or explaining an improvement of the OT construction of this paper, which is the first to give the two-round efficient OT extension. Okay. Okay, so towards our two extension. So what's the idea? So I already mentioned before that an intermediate step in the IKNP protocol is correlated OT, and this will also be an intermediate step in our protocol. So the idea is correlated OT, the sender does not have two independent messages, but the sender has one message, and the other message is always a constant offset of the first message. And yeah, you can think about bit OT or string OT, like I didn't. Yes, and this is where IKNP and also what we will do use a correlation robust hash function to apply it to this correlated messages, and then because it's correlation robust, the idea is that then what you get is uncorrelated messages, and then but this is also something, I mean, I said before, like the PCGs, what you get is something pseudorandom. Also here, this is something random, so this gives you random message OT. This doesn't give you chosen message OT. What in many applications you actually want chosen message OT. Like for OT extension, what you can then do is you de-randomize, and the idea is basically using the random inputs and outputs as like a mask that you have from as a one-time pad. And so what will be the strategy to achieve a pseudorandom correlation generator for correlated OT? So if you look at the first at the correlated OT, actually the message that Alice obtains, you can rewrite it as it's the message of Bob XORed with Y times her choice bit, like either it's added or it's not added. So in other words, what the two parties want to obtain is an additive secret sharing of Y times B, where Y is the constant offset of the sender of Bob, and B is the choice vector of Alice. So what we will show is first how to get a pseudorandom correlation generator, assuming that the choice, the vector of choice bits is a unit vector. So Alice always chooses the first message except for one time. And also how to set it up. Then, like very briefly, if you have this for unit vector, it's straightforward how to get to sparse vectors, because you can just repeat it a number of times, and because you have an additive secret sharing, adding up all your shares will give you something that is an additive secret sharing of Y times the sparse vector. And then the next step, this is like the interesting part, this is where the learning parity with noise comes in, and this is also why we're actually able to get a two-round, to make it two-round, is how do we get from a sparse vector to a pseudorandom vector. And I won't have time to talk about it, but this is also something new of this work or of this talk, is that we get set up with malicious security. And if you find with a random oracle model, then you can even also get it to round with malicious security. Okay, so the main tool for that we use is a puncturable pseudorandom function. A puncturable pseudorandom function is just a pseudorandom function where you can give out keys that allow you to evaluate the function at every point except for one specific point. And at this point, the requirement is that it still looks pseudorandom. So very simple construction. You can look at the GGM construction of a PRF from a PRG, and where you always, like, depending on the input, you walk down left or right the path to the leaves. And if you look here, if you get the key, if you get the root, you can evaluate all the tree. But if you want to puncture it at one point, then you can just give as a punctured key just all the points that are off the path, and this will allow you to evaluate everything except for this one value. And the size of the key is then, because you need a key for every level of the tree, and our input space is 1 to n, will be lambda log n. So yeah, log n times the key. And then the ID for the PCG is very simple. So Bob has just a key and this offset y, and Alice will get a punctured key, and at the punctured position that will be used to blind the term y. And then the two-party can locally expand. So locally expanding meaning just evaluating the PRF on all values. So except for the one value that Alice cannot evaluate, there she will just put the value that she got. And she will expand a position alpha, and the position alpha is basically like a very short encoding of her choice of unit vector. It just says where she wants the one to be. And yeah, it's easy to see, like all the blue parts cancel out, and because the way we set it up, this V and W will constitute a additive secret sharing of y times this unit vector. And yeah, the compression is basically the size of the punctured key. And so this is not the hard part actually, or like the hard part is to get something that you can set up efficiently, because what we want here is 2-round OT extension. So what we want is a 2-round setup. And how can we set it up in 2-round? Because then of course we cannot allow Bob cannot send up the punctured key, because then he would know where it's punctured, and else cannot know the key. So you can view this as a distributed point function, because basically like a point function that is shared between Alice and Bob, like a function that's just non-zero at a single point. So one strategy is to use a technique of Dörner and Chelat from 2017 to set up the key for a distributed point function. But this requires log n rounds. So because you have to do something always depending on the last outcome of the OT, so you inherently have log n sequential executions of OT. And the observation of this work, why we get from log n round to 2-round, is that actually we have something that in our setting the parties know more than you're allowed to know for a distributed key function, because you're actually allowed to know the alpha. And the receiver, so the alpha is the punctured point. So the receiver chooses the punctured point. She chooses, it's her choice bits, so she knows where it is. And this allows basically to do something non-adaptive and to parallelize the technique of Dörner and Chelat. So you can do it all, like you can do all the OTs instead of sequentially. You can do them all in parallel, and then if you have a 2-round OT, this actually just takes 2 rounds. And yeah, I don't want to go into it in detail, but it's still very based on the technique of Dörner and Chelat. And yeah, this is actually something that can improve parts of the PCGs from previous papers, so the OT and the volley. And yes, so I don't think I really need this slide. It's just saying, like, if you add it up, like T unit vectors, you get a sparse vector. And the interesting point is the next slide. How do you get from sparse to pseudorandom vectors? So the LPN assumption states, it's here like the standard LPN assumption is you have a public matrix and a secret, and And you say that if you add a sparse noise, so sparse meaning it's non-zero only at a few points, then you get something that looks pseudorandom. And what you can do is you can take basically the parity check matrix or the left kernel of the LPN matrix, and then you see if you multiply it, then the secret zeroes out, and all you have left is this purple matrix, which we call H, times the sparse noise, and that will look pseudorandom based on LPN. So this is dual LPN, and this is what we will use, because it has like two properties. First of all, we get something pseudorandom, like applying it to something sparse. And second of all, it's very nice, it's linear. So we can again do the same trick as we did going from a unit vector to a sparse vector. We can just multiply it to all share sets separately, and then we will get additive secret sharing of this pseudorandom vector times y. And the main challenge here is like actually computing this product, because H will be big. As I said, like if you're interested in getting many OTs, we'll consider like up to 10 million OTs. So the dimension of this matrix will be very big. And one way to deal with it is choosing H as the parity check matrix of a quasi-cyclic code, and then you get a multiplication in O tilde of n. Yes. And security is similar to post-quantum crypto system like BIKE or HQC. And why is it called a symmetric assumption? So you can say it's a symmetric assumption. It depends on the noise rate that you choose. But you can choose regimes of the noise rate. Namely, if you choose large enough noise rate, then it's not known to imply public key encryption or a T. So you can say it lives in the symmetric world. And now putting it all together, so it's just like a recap slide. So the idea is giving a key and a punctured key to a puncturable pseudorandom function to Alice and Bob. This can be done in a two-round setup. This is the new thing of this work, the new idea. And repeating it like t times, you can all do this in parallel, adding it up, and in the end, multiplying this H to actually get it for a pseudorandom B. And now we still have to do that. This is what I said in the first slide. We still have to break the correlation and de-randomized. Breaking the correlation can be just also done like locally. De-randomization, you have to think a bit more carefully about it, because you have to send additional messages. But you want to make sure it's still 2 rounds. But it's okay. Basically, the idea is Alice can already compute her vector B, like before any communication with Bob. And so she can compute H times B and use this to blind her like actual choice bits. So even this actually gives us 2-round OT extension. And so yes, we can answer the question that I imposed before with yes. Actually, I didn't talk about efficient yet, but I hope you'll be convinced after the next slide that it is efficient. And it's based on learning parity with noise. And how does it circumvent? So of course it's not black box, because we rely, like we use the actual assumption. We use the learning parity with noise assumption. And so basically the linearity of the linear learning parity with noise assumption introduces some additional correlation, which such that the low bound that I talked about before of Garget does not apply. And yes, so why is it efficient, or like how is it different from Beaver's protocol? So what we want to capture is that it's in some sense has a bit more of a black box flavor. So what does it mean? I mean, of course, it's not black box, but you could say something like, if a generic LPN model exists, then our construction would actually give you a black box construction in this generic LPN model. And yeah, if I have time at the end, I will talk a bit about it. Why is this hard to formulate such a model, or like, yeah, what it means. Okay, And now, yeah, I said it's efficient. Now I hope, like, now you have to see that it's efficient. So it's 2 round, yes, and also, like, if you look at, like, the why it's efficient is because we use so little communication. So as you see, the previous best approach needed 78 bits per random OT, even for bit OT. And now we bring it down to less than a bit. So you need to communicate less than a bit per random OT. And yes, as I said already, you get active security also in 2 rounds using Fiat Shamir. And you have the only OT extension that has this silent feature. And this has various implications. So you get semi-honest 2-party computation with 4.2 bits of communication per gate, which is like a 30 times speed up, like right away from improving the communication to better, so 30 times better than previous approaches. It improves private set intersection, malicious multi-party computation, and in particular, it's useful for non-interactive secure computation. And yeah, some runtimes, so we have a prototype implementation. So in particular, like, it depends, because our approach is the expensive part is computation. So if you have a very fast network, then IKNP is faster. But if you go to, if you look here, we actually have almost a 50 times speed up over IKNP. And yeah, also here you can again see the total communication is now like 1,000 times less than before. On top of 2 versus 3 rounds, yes. Okay, yes. And yeah, this leads me to the conclusion. So yeah, this is a 2-round OT extension from LPN, which is concretely efficient. Malicious security is also at low cost. I just said it doesn't increase the round. It also doesn't increase the computational efficiency much, so it's only like 10 to 20%. We didn't implement it. We just have some, like estimations. And like open problems and also things we're looking into is what would be super cool is to get the same, like to get a PCG where you have like incremental output. If you don't want, say, 10 million OTs at a time, but like you just have to exchange a short seed and then you can get OTs whenever you need them. Like, I mean, dream goal the rest of your life. And yeah, and the second thing is formalize the black box flavor, like it's more of a theoretical interest. Formalizing the black box flavor of our construction in a generic LPN model. And why is that difficult? So if you say so, like in our protocol, the honest parties only get to query, don't only have to query the oracle like 1 or 2 times. But if we would restrict the adversary to do this, then of course that would trivialize the construction. It would make proving security too easy. On the other hand, if we allow the adversary unlimited oracle access, because it's a linear function, the adversary can learn the function. So there's no security left against unbounded adversaries. And so the question is like, how can you get a model where you specify maybe some leakage function where there's like different roles, like depending on how much leakage the adversary, how many queries the adversary gets. And then what I said before, what we want to say is like in any of such worlds, if an adversary getting access to this oracle could break our construction, then he could actually break the LPN construction. And more broadly, like what I want to say in this talk, well, pseudorandom correlation generators are useful, not just for OT, but for many other applications. Generally, secure multi-party computation protocols with silent pre-processing, because this is usually like the expensive, communication-intensive part of MPC protocol, and you can replace it with pseudorandom correlation generators. And yeah, also in this direction, can you extend the techniques that I presented to like more generally, like to efficiently generate beaver triples or oblivious linear evaluation or other correlations that are interesting for applications. And yes, so that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.